All right, here we are with Margery Phelps Borom Childs. All right, Nana.
Nana, yes.
When were you born and where were you born?
I was born in Atlanta, Georgia.
Really? What hospital?
St. Joseph's, downtown. I tell people I was born in St. Joe, downtown. Everybody thinks it's downtown, it's out on Bill Hill. But back when I was born, it was down on Portland Street, downtown Atlanta.
That's funny. Okay. And when?
November 27, 1944.
Ah, it's funny. So I have the wrong date in my Ancestry here. Something picked up something wrong. I have to fix that. I see it already.
It looks like it says 1943.
It does. I'll have to fix that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so what I wanted to do is I have Ancestry.com on the TV, which you can't see, but I can plop some photos in every so often here. But what we want to do is just sort of do a genealogical discussion here and tell some stories or whatever. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go this way. So I'm now showing your mom and dad, which James Hill Borom and Margery Hall Robinson.
Right.
So, which we call Mama B, by the way.
Correct, Mama B.
So if you hear about Mama B, we're talking about Nana's mother. So talk about your dad, talk about your mom.
Oh, okay. Well, my dad was born in Savannah and grew up in Atlanta and went to Georgia Tech. And he was a basketball player. He was very athletic. And I believe it was his sophomore year, he suffered a severe hip injury and lower back injury. And the treatment for those particular injuries back then was bed rest for a year.
A year?
A year.
Okay.
And he got up a year later and was about 6 inches shorter. His spine was deformed.
Really?
It turns out that he actually had ankylosing spondylitis,
Oh.
which is a severe form of
So that's what
arthritis
caused
of the spine.
arthritis of the spine?
And the worst thing you can do if you've got ankylosing spondylitis is to be still.
Huh.
So he was quite deformed, but a very gifted artist and engineer. He and my mom met in Atlanta. Interesting story how my mom got down here. You want me to tell you?
Yeah, that's why we're here.
So my mom was born in New York, was raised in New York, went to art school in New York, Pratt Institute in New York, which at that time was one of the finest art institutes in the world, art schools in the world. She had a degree in fine art and commercial art. She was very sickly as a child, and because both of her parents were from the South, they would send her back south for the summer vacations, and she would spend them in the North and South Carolina mountains, sometime down on the coast. But she just loved the South. So after she graduated from art school, she went to work for a company called Montagues. They designed stationery.
Yeah.
And she was in this big, huge pool of artists. And one day the art director came in and said, "We've got a temporary assignment in Atlanta. Does anybody want it?" And of course, my mother's raising her hand. "Oh, yeah, I'll go to Atlanta." So they gave her a train ticket and put her on a train to Atlanta. She didn't even know what the assignment was. She just knew it was a 2-week assignment. And she got to the Atlanta office, and she reported to the art director there. And she said to him, "What am I supposed to do?" And he said, "You're going to design all the commemorative stationery for Gone with the Wind."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So
wait a minute, they had a Yankee design the stationery for Gone with the Wind.
Well, but both her parents were from Charleston.
I know, but I'm just saying.
Which is another story. I'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, so she did all that, and she finished the assignment, and they were all happy. And she just had fallen in love with Atlanta. She needed to stay here.
Right.
So she called her boss in New York, and she said, I really, really like it here. Is there any way I can stay? And he said, we don't care where you work. You can work anywhere. Just mail us your stuff. So my mother was probably one of the first people to work off-site.
So remote work.
Yeah, remote work. So she met my dad and they got married in 1936. My brother was born in 38.
Okay.
During the war effort, because he was not combat qualified due to his back disease,
Right.
my dad he did enlist. He was recruited to work for one of the aircraft companies designing aircraft. So they went to Wichita, Kansas, and for 2 years he worked at an aircraft factory designing airplanes for the war effort.
Huh.
And
Interesting.
they moved back to Atlanta, and they bought a little house in an area called Buckhead.
Which was cattle country.
It was not the place to be.
Right.
And my father told my mother, he said, don't you dare tell anybody we live in Buckhead. It's not the respectable place to be.
Oh, wow. Now it's one of the most respectable places to be.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Anyway, Can I backtrack to my grandparents?
Yeah, well, I want you to talk about, first, so, so tell you what, let's go to your mother's grandparents, because we're talking about Charleston, right?
Right.
So that's Robert Augustus, or Gus Robinson,
Right.
and Margery Lillian Hall.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's a fun story about how they met too. So my grandparents, Robert Augustus, everybody called him Pop,
Okay.
and my grandmother Margery Lillian, everybody called her Mom
Yeah.
and Pop Robinson.
Right.
Both grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, and there was a big difference in their ages, and like 9 years.
Oh, I see that now. 1869 for Robert or for Augustus, and then 1878 for Margery Lillian.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. 11 years? Yeah, no, 9 years.
Yeah.
So they even grew up in the same parish church, but it was a huge Episcopal church in Charleston, and so they never crossed because of the age differences.
Oh, okay, because 9 years, yeah.
So when my grandmother was a teenager, she had 3 teenage siblings. They lost both their parents within a year or so, and their guardian was an attorney in New York City. And this guardian said, I can't be supervising 4 teenagers in Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm in New York. So he packed them up, moved them up to New York.
Oh, okay.
So my grandmother was living in New York. She went to what they call finishing school back then to learn how to be a proper lady.
Right.
And she belonged to St. Paul's Church in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
And she went to church every Sunday. And she was coming out of church one morning and saying good morning to the priest. And he said, Miss Hall, we have another parishioner here, a young man from your hometown.
Right.
And he's in the hospital. He was pistol whipped and mugged on the street. He's recovering in the hospital. And since you're from his hometown, the proper thing for you to do would be to pay a call.
And that was Robert Augustus.
And that was Robert Augustus.
Isn't that
So
in New York?
people. Now, how my grandfather ended up there, he graduated from college at Charleston in 1898 and wanted to go to work in marketing, in sales and marketing. And there was this little startup company up north, and they said, well, come up here, you can work for us. And that was the beginning of AT&T.
Oh, wow. Huh.
So he was with AT&T until 1938. His last job there was overseeing the installation of all the phones in the Empire State Building.
Oh, wow.
So that's how a Southern girl, my mother, Margery, was Mom B.
Right.
Was born in New York to 2 Southern parents.
That's funny. Too funny. All right, so let's talk about your dad's parents, which I have Edward Kelly Borom and Mary Jane Saunders,
Yes.
which I'm hoping is correct because we may get here somewhere where I'm not correct. We'll find out.
Right. Okay, so unfortunately, my parents were divorced when I was 4 years old. I did not know my grandfather at all.
Okay.
My grandfather, Edward.
Right.
I did know my grandmother. I saw her several times.
Yeah.
She used to send me and my twin sister beautiful gifts.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's a story about that later.
Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful clothes. Anyway, they were both stenographers. Back then, a stenographer was to a business magnate what a secretary of administrative assistant is now.
Right, yeah.
And they handled all the communications, and it was all done by stenography and by wire and things like that.
Right, yeah.
And they were both experts at it. So my grandmother was hired by, I'm trying to remember, it's one of the guys that owned the Winter Railroads. And she went all around the country with him as his personal stenographer.
Huh, okay.
And she and my grandfather met in the courtroom one day when they were both there for their respective employers, taking notes.
Yeah.
And that's how they met. And they had 3 boys. My father, who was the oldest,
Right.
and then my uncle Wilbur, and then my uncle Edward, who played in 2 World Series.
So, yeah, Uncle Edward, okay, he played for the Tigers?
Yeah, Detroit Tigers.
Yeah, I remember that. And then I remember because he lived in Texas, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then here's where, so I'm going to go up the ladder here because I don't know who these are. But do you know who your grandfather Edward Kelly's parents are? Because I don't.
I think I've got it in my stuff at home.
Okay. We're going to,
I'll have
because
to
I
get
want to
that
follow
for
up
you.
on that.
Yeah.
So, but your grandmother's parents I have as William A. Jones and
Right.
Mary Jane Saunders.
Right.
So same name.
Right.
Is that correct as far as you know?
As far as I know, yes.
Your great grandparents? Okay.
Right.
And then, so going back down to your mom's side, Robert Augustus Robinson's parents were Jude Robinson
Correct.
and Mary Young Ellison. And of course, Holly's middle name is Ellison.
Right.
Her third
That's where
name
we
is
get it
Ellison.
from. Right.
Yeah, that's where we got that from.
Right.
So what do you know about Jude? Of course, it's funny. I have pictures for one side of the family, but not the other sometimes.
Oh.
So that's why you see pictures on here. So tell me about Jude and Mary Young.
Well, unfortunately, I don't know that much. Okay, on the Ellison side,
Yeah.
there's a house in Williston, South Carolina.
Okay.
I've not been to it, but my mother has and my sister.
Yeah.
And there was an old family piano. And it's considered so precious, it's deeded to the house.
Oh, really?
So whoever lives in the house has to
Has the
maintain the
Oh.
piano.
Really?
And it's still there as of a few years ago. The piano is still with the house.
So that was an Ellison piano?
Uh-huh.
All right, so I'm going to backtrack that real quick. What I have is R.O. Ellison and Cynthia A., and that's all I have for their parents.
Oh, okay. I think
But-
I also got that. Okay.
Which is funny because you go back further. I've got William Holmes Ellison as their, and Mary Harrison as their parents. And I have a Woodward,
Correct.
which I think is funny because that's a famous name.
Right.
And then I have, further back from that, I have another Ellison and then a Sarah Elizabeth Potts.
Right.
So we're going way back. And another Harrison and another Phoebe. So there's some stuff we got to figure out, you know,
Right.
which maybe with what you got, we can do that.
Right.
Okay, so, and then we're going to go back over to your grandmother's parents, which were Isaac Hosmer Hall
Correct.
and Gertrude Irene Crane Fulgraf,
Correct.
which I have pictures of, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
What do you know about those folks?
Well, they also lived in Charleston.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, now the whole family originally was from up north,
Okay.
and some of them migrated south. They were a real prominent family in Connecticut, and way way further back in that line, Governor William Pitkin was the first colonial governor of Connecticut.
Yeah.
And that's that line that comes down. And many years later, several hundred years later, when my twin sister and her husband moved to Connecticut, Mary used to say, "Oh, I feel like I'm at home. I belong in Connecticut."
Huh.
And she wanted to run for a town council seat, or a, what do you call a person that votes? Elector.
Right.
Elector seat.
Yeah.
And she had to go up before and make this talk, and she premised the whole thing on our so many greats grandfather, Sir William Pitkin, being the first colonial governor of Connecticut, and this man that held that seat had held it for like 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
And she unseated him based on her family history.
Oh, really? That's cool. So this says Isaac Hosmer Hall was born in 1846 in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
And then Gertrude was also born in New York.
Okay.
So they must have met up there, maybe.
Yeah. So that was the, okay. And then they moved, that was the side that came south.
That moved us, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
she died in Charleston.
So as you see, as soon as you, well, y'all can't see it, but I'll show it to you. As soon as you click on Isaac Hosmer Hall, it pops open, and that's where you get Isaac Hall, 1815 to 1883, and it says born in Northumberland, England.
Right.
Born in 1815, died 1883 in Brooklyn, Kings, New York.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And then Sarah Sophia Phelps, his wife,
right, which
was
is where I get
born
my name.
in Oyster Bay, New York, and then died in Brooklyn's, Kings, New York. So there is definitely a New York connection right in there. So that was Isaac Hall and Sarah Sophia Phelps, which is where you get the Phelps name coming through.
Right. And
then his parents were Philip Hall and Ann Teasdale, 1769, 1776 birth dates. Hers were Asa Hosmer Phelps, 1795 to 1835, and Margaret McCown or McCoon, 17, which I'm just curious since I have information there. Marlborough, Massachusetts is where he was born and died in New York. She was born in New York and died in San Francisco. Huh. Then I'm going back even further. So Philip Hall's parents were William Hall and Sarah Sowerby. And I'm looking at Westmoreland, which I'm assuming Westmoreland is England.
Yeah.
And then Sarah Sowerby says, yeah. So Sarah Sowerby was born Appleby in Westmoreland, Cumbria, England. So that would be your fourth great grandmother.
Right. Fifth?
Fourth, because it's fifth to Allison.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I'm going backwards.
Right.
And then Ann Teasdale, her parents were William Teasdale. This is always fun to look and see. Again, Bradford, Yorkshire, England, 1750, died in Denholm Gate, Yorkshire, England, in 1825. And then, was that Hannah? No. Then Hannah Ambler, born in Denham, Thornton, Bradford, Yorkshire County, England, United Kingdom. That's a long thing. And died in Yorkshire, West Riding, United Kingdom.
Yeah.
And then I'm going down to Asa Hosmer Phelps. And his parents were, pronounce that word. You know how to pronounce that name?
Which one?
This one. How do you pronounce that name?
Oh, I have no idea.
How do you pronounce the one below it? See that one?
My heavens. Mike, I've never seen those before.
I don't know what they are. ATLhickman, Phelps,
We'll have to ask Cousin Catherine.
and Mahitable Dodge.
Yeah, I have never seen that name.
So,
I'll have to go back and look at the stuff I've got.
well, look at that. Lebanon, New London, Connecticut. Died in
Okay.
Ohio.
Yeah.
Then Mahitable Dodge, New London, Connecticut. So I wonder if that has anything to do with Dodge trucks or Dodge vehicles. And the McCoon, that's your fourth great grandfather.
Right.
Oyster Bay, Long Island, New York.
Yeah.
And then Sarah Townsend, Oyster Bay, Long Island, New York. You know, isn't it funny how when you look back at the stuff like this where folks just didn't marry people from very far away because they just didn't travel that far.
No.
You know, they didn't have the ability to. So you just didn't do it. So anyway, well, so
Yeah.
I want you to. So I want to go forward, backwards. So because we didn't talk about Aunt Mary, but so Aunt Mary was your twin sister.
Correct.
So who's older?
I am.
Are you? By how long?
And she always resented.
Really?
5 minutes.
That you were 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
That's
Top of my
funny.
head is perfectly flat. And I used to tell her it's because she was sitting on me, kicked me out.
I love it. That's pretty funny.
5 minutes. Yep.
Oh man.
So my twin sister and I had the names Mary and Margie.
Right.
Mary and Margery. And everybody used to think, oh, that's like Linda and Brenda, or, you know,
Right,
we
right.
got different names. Well, in actuality, the firstborn was named after my mother's mother, Margery.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
My twin sister got her name from my father's mother, whose name was Mary Jane.
Oh, I see it. It's right here.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. So
Now
we
it's
were both
obvious.
named for our grandmothers.
oh,
And
okay.
Mary always resented the fact that I was firstborn and was named after the grandmother that we were so close to and loved so much.
Wow, and it's funny because her grandma, Mary Jane's mother, was also a Mary,
A lot of
And-
Marys.
and Marjorie's mother-in-law was a Mary.
Correct.
Isn't that funny?
A lot of
that-
Marys.
that-
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then
Yeah.
that's pretty funny. That is pretty wild. So I'm going to go in here because I thought it would be interesting. So there's these little leaves.
Uh-huh.
So these little leaves are things that are little snippets of information that you can get. So here's an interesting one. So look at this.
Yeah, D.L. Stokes. That's a real estate firm.
So this is the World War II draft card for James Hill Borom.
Right.
And looks like his address was 15
Arkway.
Arc. Is that what that is?
Arkway,
Oh, Arkway,
Arkway.
Atlanta. Okay.
which is right behind Atlantic Square, which is Buckhead.
Oh. So why did they cross out 516 North Ash Street, Wichita, Kansas?
I guess because he had just moved.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, but born in Savannah, and then Margery Robinson Borom, your wife, will know your address. Oh, look, rural free delivery. People don't know what RFD means anymore.
Yeah, no, they don't. Real free delivery.
Rural Free Delivery 1, Dunwoody, Fulton County, Georgia.
That's where our grandparents were living.
And so he was working for D.L. Stokes at the time?
Yes,
And what did they do?
real estate.
Oh, really?
So can I give you a real estate story about him?
Yeah, and look, he's got a beautiful signature.
Oh, okay.
See that?
So, yeah,
That's pretty.
he had
Okay.
a beautiful handwriting.
Yep.
Beautiful.
I'm going to say, now that I know that's a correct document.
After my parents were divorced, my father tried to have reconciliation, and
Right.
he wanted to see his children. He was very devoted to us.
Yeah.
My mother didn't get alimony as a way of keeping him from seeing us. If she took alimony, she would have to let him see us. So growing up, I was always heard that he didn't pay alimony. Well, the fact was, he didn't pay alimony because she wouldn't let him see his children.
Oh,
And he
okay.
was so brokenhearted, he moved back to Texas to live with his parents, and he was already had been in real estate, established broker in Atlanta, so he started a real estate business there, and he found a whole bunch of property outside of Dallas, and started buying it up and seeing it developed, and everybody, all his friends said, Jim, you're going to lose your shirt. That place is never going to be anything. Well, that little place that my father first bought and started developing is called Irving, Texas.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, it's funny because the next document is a city directory from Atlanta, and it says James H. Borom, salesman, D.L. Stokes and Company,
Right.
Peachtree Dunwoody Road. So that document is correct. So I'm adding it now.
Right.
So I'm gonna save that. So that piece will now save to his tree. Now here's what's funny. I've got a yearbook from 1929. So this would be a yearbook, Georgia Tech, 1929.
Yeah. Oh, you found it! I'm so excited.
Look at there, James
Hill
Borom.
I've been looking for that.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
So somewhere, oh Lord, I don't know if we can pick them out of all those folks.
If I had a close up and plenty of time, I'm sure
I'll
I
have
could
to.
find it.
That's what we're going to do. Is I want to save this, and then you can look at it, and then
Okay.
you can mark it for me. But
Oh, I'm
page
so glad you found that.
95. I didn't. Ancestry did. That's why this is so much fun. I'm saving that, so I've got that in here now. All right. What else is here? It looks like there's a newspaper. Oh. Let's see if this is right. This is obituary. James Borom, Edward Kelly Borom. Doesn't really say much there. I don't know if I assume that's correct, but I'm not going. I never added until I know. Oh, look, 1910 federal census. And we got. It looks like Edward K. Borom, Marie.
Yeah, a lot of people call her Marie.
Okay,
Maybe
and
that
then
was Mary. Yeah.
oh, maybe it is Mary. It's hard to read some of this stuff.
No,
And then
I
James
remember
H.
my
Borom.
mother calling her Marie, but my mother generally called her Myrrh. I don't know where Myrrh came from.
Well, look, this says Edward K. Borom and Marie. It says place of birth, Alabama.
Yes,
Is that correct?
Yes, they're both. She was born in Alabama.
Okay. English. It says commercial. I have no what that is. Commercial.
I can't figure that out.
I don't know what it says either.
So that's supposed to be his profession.
Yeah, commercial. Something.
Is there any way for me to say stenographer or
Yeah, I mean,
something? I don't know.
I don't know.
No.
But that looks correct too, because
Yep.
that's the right people.
Wow, you have dug up so much stuff.
No, I'm literally, we're doing this like as we go along.
Oh, are we?
Yep. All right, I'm going to go back because I'm going to go back to from James
Well, I've got two
Borom.
really interesting stories about my mother's uncle, who I love dearly, and even though he's not in the genetic line, he was my grandmother's brother.
Right.
He was their only brother. And when they were children growing up in Charleston, he used to like to go sit down on the pier
Yeah.
and fish. And he made friends with this elderly black man.
Uh-huh.
And they were just, it was his best buddy. I
Yeah.
can't remember what Unky called him. Anyway.
Uncle's name was, say it again. So,
Isaac Hosmer Hall.
Isaac Hosmer.
Yeah,
Okay,
he was named after his father.
Okay.
That elderly black man was subject of the musical Porgy and Bess.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's cool. That's pretty cool. Huh. So this is a picture that's obviously correct.
Yes. That was my grandmother before she lost her eye.
Oh, how did she lose her eye?
Well, she always had trouble with that left eye most of her life.
Yeah.
And as she aged, it started bulging more and more, and she developed terrible headaches. And she had several surgeries to remove a tumor of unknown origin from her head. And when my mother was a child, she lost sight in the eye, and they had to remove it.
Right.
And they removed this very strange tumor, and the doctor said it's not malignant, but we don't know what it is, but it continues to grow, but it's not cancer.
Right.
We didn't find out until she was 81 years old and near death that kind of tumor is extremely rare. It's called a teratoma.
Right.
And what it is embryonic twin.
Ah, this is funny.
And
Recognize that.
no one in medical history had ever lived with an embryonic twin in the brain past late
Recognize that
teenage.
person?
Hmm?
Recognize that person?
Oh my God.
You recognize that person right next to him?
Yeah, I sure do.
That's so funny. So what yearbook is this from? Oh, this is Zeta
Yeah,
at Georgia State.
Georgia State Zetas.
So this needs to go. See, now it's funny. That's right. That's correct. Yep. Okay. No, save it. See, this is where it messes up. It wants to save it for the wrong person.
Oh.
It wants to save it. It thinks. I can fix that though. I know how to fix that. It's.
Now the other one over there on the lower right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's Mary. That's not me.
Yeah, no, I see that. That's
Oh,
why,
I see.
Yeah,
That's why
which
you
is funny. I can tell the difference.
Yeah.
I don't know how to fix that though. I'll have to. It wants to save it to the wrong person.
Oh, I got you.
It wants to save it to Margery Borom. It wants to save it to your mother.
Oh.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, because it's got Margery. Yeah. I
because
see.
it says Margery, yeah, but I can fix that later. I know how to fix that.
Okay.
Let me go back over here. So let's go to Robert Augustus Robinson.
Okay.
Because there's no. The further you get back, the things show up. Well, this is interesting.
Right.
So, do you know, is that photograph correct? Have you seen it before?
Oh my gosh, my grandparents. Back in the day when
So that's
couples
correct.
were in photographs, they usually weren't even touching.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And every picture I've got of my grandparents, they are very close and touching like that. I've never seen anything like it.
Isn't this funny? Because that's pretty obviously your mom on top left.
Yes.
Okay.
And that in front of her, that man on the left is Unky, my mother's uncle, my grandmother's brother.
Oh, the one you just talked about that met the black man on the.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this is a correct photograph.
He was a bachelor, never married.
Okay. I'm going to save that one.
He was kind of like Mary's my surrogate father. Since
Do you know John Streifert?
Mm-hmm.
You know John Streifert?
I know the name.
That's who added that photograph.
Really?
Yeah, usually when you find stuff like this, some other family member has submitted it. And sometimes you'll see something that pops up that you see who it is, and sometimes not. The censuses I usually play with later because they're just not as interesting. But let me go back over here. So now I'm going to Margery Lillian Hall. Oops. It has hints. These are called hints. So, well, so there's an obituary. So let's see what it says.
Yeah.
It says.
St. Martin in the Fields, yeah. So that's a good story.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
St. Martin in the Fields.
Which is where my Alice and I were married.
Correct. And we're Richmond, Martha.
Yep.
I was confirmed there.
Yep.
My brother was the first crucifer, which is the acolyte that carries the cross down the aisle first. So how St. Martin's got started when my grandfather was deathly ill. My mother and my grandmother belonged to St. Luke's in downtown Atlanta.
Okay.
And when my grandfather was on his deathbed, my grandparents lived in Dunwoody, which is a long ways away from downtown Atlanta then.
Yeah.
Still is. Milton Richardson, who was the rector, had to drive all the way out to Dunwoody. And he did the last rites, and the ambulance came and took my grandfather away. And I can still remember it. I was about 3.5. I still remember sitting in my grandmother's big living room, and Milton Richardson, the priest,
Yeah.
and my mother, and my grandmother,
Yeah.
and my godmother, Nan Ramsey,
Yeah.
all sitting in the living room, and Milton saying, "We have got to start a mission church on this side of Atlanta."
Oh,
Because
really?
it's just too far to come way out here. And my godmother, who was quite wealthy,
Right.
said, "Well, what does it take?" And Milton Richardson said, "A lot of money." And she said, "Well, consider it done."
And that's how St. Martin's
And
in the
that's how
Fields got
St.
started?
Martin in the Fields was started.
Wow.
So we started looking around. They started looking around for.
Now,
They started
didn't Father
looking.
Gable marry you too?
Yes. Y'all
So
the
we
first,
both
second
had this-
generation.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So they started looking around for a place, and Oglethorpe University said we could use the lobby of Phoebe Hearst Hall at Oglethorpe to hold our first services in. So that's where the first services were.
Oh, wow.
And my brother carried a wooden cross that was nailed to the end of a broomstick at the first handle, first service.
Oh, wow.
And so it came time to name the church. Well, Oglethorpe University is named after Lord Oglethorpe, who was the founder of Georgia.
Right. Yeah.
Lord Oglethorpe was from England, of course,
Right.
and he was baptized at St. Martin in the Fields, London, England.
Huh.
So that's how we got the name St. Martin in the Fields.
Ah, got it. Okay.
And it became, at one time, it was the second largest diocese in church in the Diocese of Atlanta. I don't think it's that big anymore. I think this
Right.
is.
Oh, was it a bigger?
So Mary and I were confirmed at that church. Grew up at that church. We were both married in that church. Both my children were baptized at that church. Grew up at that church. We got married at that church.
Oh, wow. That's where Allison went to church too.
Yes.
So now I'm going to another record, but it's Margery Lillian Hall, and it looks like this is her birth certificate. Return of a birth, Board of Health, Mazick Street, female, second child, September 5th, 1878. Place of birth, New Street.
Yeah.
Full name of mother, Gertrude Irene Hall.
Right.
Maiden name was Fulgraft. Mother's birthplace is New York City. Mother's residence, Charleston. Father, Isaac Hosmer Hall. Father's occupation, this is what's interesting, sash and blind factory.
Oh, for heaven's sake, I never knew that.
So I don't know, but it said father's birthplace, Brooklyn, New York. And then, of course, the medical attendant and whatnot. But
Yeah.
isn't that interesting? So that looks correct
That's
to me.
correct.
So I'm fixing
Yeah.
to add it to the whole thing because it looks correct. And then, so anything else interesting pops up in here? Nope. We already got the photographs in there we just saw. And then, so I'm going to go back to. At some point, you run out of more fun stuff because, well, there's the same birth certificate right there. Every once in a while, you find something that you get oh, look, this is funny. Huh. This is the Episcopal Diocese of New York Church Records, 1767 to 1970. And in here, you've got it's loading it up, but I guess there's going to be Isaac Hosmer Hall's marriage in here somewhere. Sometimes it'll show you exactly where it is, but yeah. What's funny though is that sometimes you hope you're going to get a signature, but this is the same person who wrote all this, every one of these in here at the same time. But Schofield. Oh, very top one.
Oh, there it
Isaac
is.
Hosmer Hall, Gertrude Irene Fulgraft.
Yeah.
Charleston and
Morristown.
Morrisania.
Morrisania. I never heard of that.
Morrisania, New York. I never heard that either. House of Bride's Friends. Where they were born, where they were married. Yeah, Mauritania, October 5th, 1871. Okay, that looks correct to me because all the names work.
Right.
So I'm going to add that to it. Ancestry.com is owned by the Mormons.
Is it really?
And they have.
Well, that makes sense because they've got the most records.
And they have. Well, that's because they buy them all. I mean, they buy blueprints. I mean, they buy. That's why how they have the blueprint from 1929 from Georgia Tech, because they bought them and they scan them in.
Yeah.
Then they have optical character readers that reads this stuff. So this looks like marriage newspaper extracts, New York, 1801 to 1880. Let's see what that says. It says Stiver, Brown, Weaver, Porter. Yeah, Mauritania, New York, Reverend A.S. Hall, Isaac Hall of Charleston, South Carolina, Gertrude. So it looks like that Isaac Hall's brother or dad or something was Reverend A.S. Hall in New York.
Oh, interesting.
So he must have been
that.
I mean, I'm assuming, I could be wrong, but you assume
Right.
that they're related, you think.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to save that too because that looks correct. Save. And then, let's see. What else shows up? Some census stuff. Vermont death records, but you never know if that's correct. That's Gertrude Irene Hall. That's probably correct. You think?
I think.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
State of birth, South Carolina. Passed away in Hartford, Vermont. Informant.
That's a death certificate for who? Beulah
Seaver. Who was that?
Okay, Beulah was my grandmother's sister.
Ah, okay.
And she was an RN.
Huh.
And
okay.
every time my grandmother would get sick, she lived in Vermont.
Right.
And every time my grandmother would get sick, she would come down for an extended period of time to take care of her and took care of her through her last illness.
Okay. So that is, the names all match in that as well. Interesting. All right, well, we'll go, whoops, whoa, I just saw something. What is that? Huh. Woodman of the World.
Oh. It's hard to read.
Isaac Hosner Hall. Huh. So he was a member of Woodman of the World.
What is that?
Woodman of the World.
Woodman of the World?
Woodman of the World is, it's, the way I knew it was an insurance company. But I think it started before that as like a fraternity of some kind.
Oh.
But I don't know for sure. But the quote on this stone is Revelations XIV. I have to think about that one a little while. That's 14:13. Revelations 14:13, whatever that is. So that is Isaac Hosmer Hall. That looks like correct. And then submitted by, I can't tell who it was. Isaac Hall, that's a Civil War soldier. You have to be careful when, because it's easy to have the wrong stuff. Several things have to match up before you have it right.
Right.
So let's go to Gertrude Irene full graph, and then we'll stop from there because we're probably both getting dry mouth.
Yeah.
And I'll remember where we stopped. So Gertrude Irene Hall, let's see, so South Carolina, that's that same birth record shows up, same marriage extract, so Nothing there pops up. Let's go back one more. I want to see what Isaac Hall. So he would be your second great grandfather.
Right.
Ooh, lots of records pop up for him. Huh. Quaker periodicals now. Who knows? Because there could be a lot of Halls. Let's see what it says. His name was, again, what was his name again? So
Isaac Hosmer Hall.
This just says Isaac Hall, Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, okay.
12/13/1883, which I don't know if that's a birth date or. So he may have been a Quaker. I mean, we don't know.
Well,
sure.
there were Quakers.
Oh, they were?
Because my namesake, Margery Phelps.
Okay, I won't say that then.
Margery Phelps was a Quaker.
Oh, okay.
And she was, I understood her family lived in Boston. And in the 1700s, she was on a wagon train convoy across the United States, and she went to California to start a Quaker colony out
Huh, okay.
there. And she sent letters home, and they were pretty little wooden box. And my mother always kept it, and she used to say, "This is your heritage. This is your namesake," and all she accomplished.
Oh, wow, okay.
And the letters were very carefully folded and kept in this little box we wouldn't be exposed to the light. And after my mother passed away, my brother took the box, and he said, "I'm going to write this all out."
Right.
Well, of course, now the box is gone and letters are gone. We have no idea. But
Yeah.
it was about her travels all the way across the United States
Oh, wow.
in a covered wagon
Interesting.
and starting a Quaker colony.
Well, maybe somebody has it and we'll put it up on here one day, you know?
I sure hope so.
So this says that Isaac Hall married Sarah Phelps. This is in this says Northeast, but just says Reverend George Benedict was the presiding, whoever that was. Those names all match. Let's see here. Census stuff. Same newspaper extraction. Let's go back. Okay, so that was Isaac Hall, and then it was Sarah. Huh. Did Isaac Hall have two wives at one time? Sarah Sophia Phelps
It's
and
possible
Emma Lukens?
one passed away and then you remarried.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So you were related to the Phelps then.
Right.
That's her right there.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this. Sons of the American Revolution application.
Right. My mother was a member of the DAR, and I've never taken any further. I'm sure she's disappointed that I'm not a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, but yeah.
I need to apply to the SAR, just haven't done it myself. So this says Spooner. Albert Clinton Spooner,
There's
descendant
those funny names again.
Eliphalet Phelps.
Elephant, whatever.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's that name we found earlier.
Right.
Eliphalet Phelps.
Yeah.
A lineal descendant of William S. Parks, maybe? And Eliphalet Phelps. Let's see what it says. DDS. His wife, Ida Hall, grandson, Sarah Sophie Phelps, Homer Phelps. McCoon Phelps, great-grandson of a Phelps, of a Hyde. Okay, the services of my ancestor, Eliphalet Phelps, during the War of the Revolution were as follows. Served the Revolutionary War in
18th Connecticut Regiment.
That's what, yeah, 18th Connecticut Regiment, Captain Forward's Company, August 24th to September 24th, so 1 month, 1776. But hey, if you served, you served. Birth certificate of wife of with Board of Health, Brooklyn, Phelps genealogy, page 1315, Connecticut, Revolutionary Rolls. Albert Clinton. So Clinton, so this Spooner is related somehow. I'm gonna save that to look at it later because that looks like that looks correct to me, doesn't it? There's too many names that match. Isn't that interesting? Here's a family history. Brown, Ross, Elware, Carter, Holmes, Watson, Toller, McElwee, John McElwee. Huh. Louise Brown Ross, born in Brooklyn, New York, wife of Julian Ross, descendant of Silas Phelps. Louise Hall, Asa Hosmer Phelps, Margery McCoon. Well, yeah, this is.
Yep.
That's the
Isaac
right.
Hall and Sarah Phelps. That's why. Yep.
Yeah,
Margery
Medable. There's that name again, Mahitable Dodge.
Yeah. We need to ask Cousin Catherine about that.
Okay.
That does not.
Well, we need to get her up here and just sit down and do this.
Oh, she would.
So Silas Phelps and Hannah Dewey, 1723 to 1785. Married 1742. Huh. Silas Phelps was a selectman of Lebanon, Connecticut, 1781, where he was born. I wonder what a select. This is DAR. This is a DAR book. See it?
Oh, okay, sure is.
I wonder. Yes. Say. I won a DAR essay contest one time in school.
You did.
Mm-hmm. I wish I had the essay. Mom probably does somewhere. Okay. So we stopped at Sarah Sophia Phelps, didn't we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, this has been wonderful, Mike.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna
I've learned a lot about
turn it
our
off.
family.
That's the whole idea, is to